which it eventually did. And hello! It says we are live. Welcome. This is behind the scenes of AV Rant. This is the live recording session. So, any glitches that happen, you will see live as they happen. This is not the polished version. There is a complete version that goes up later in the week. It has times in the show notes, so you can jump around to questions very directly. It also has a little intro and outro. But, things are going pretty good over here. Got our images showing up in the live feed, so should be all right. But you've been warned. This is behind the scenes if anything goes wrong. All right. There's that. We all set?
Yeah, I'm waiting on you.
I think we're good.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And very often on this podcast, we have sort of a theme that is not like intentional whatsoever, but it just happens to be something where a bunch of people ask, related or similar questions. And this week is Settings Spectacular Week because many people asked for settings in things. Oh. That is like all of our questions this week. It's pretty wild.
So should I just take this week off and let you answer all the questions?
You still got to read the questions to me because I'm not going to read them.
Oh my God. I'm such a talking head. I used to be the knowledge source of this podcast. Remember those days?
You're still the knowledge source, Tom.
Let's be honest.
I
have gladly stepped aside
changed.
and let you take the
Well,
reins.
I mean, for certain, for Plex, you don't use Plex. I use Plex. So if somebody's asking Plex settings, that's going to be me. That's how that's going to work.
Plus, whatever. So let's just get into it because we got a long podcast. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we got a lot of stuff going on. So
absolutely.
Start with our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you have to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. So we want to thank our donor, Ryan, who did that and sent us a PayPal donation. So thank you very much, Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like to donate, come to the website. It doesn't even need a www, Tom. It doesn't even need that.
One of these days. Hey, man, I've only been saying it for... I think this, May is our 12th year. Is that right?
I think that's right. Yep.
12 years. That's a dozen.
Right. It is. For all we know, it could be a baker's dozen. We might be off by a year, but...
might be off. I'm pretty sure we started in 2009. I'm pretty sure.
Well, you did. I wasn't around back then, but AVRant.com, that's the website. And come see us there.
And if you'd like to do something a little bit less, manual, you could go to patreon.com/AVRant Podcast, where you can sign up for a subscription to our podcast, which will take a monthly donation out of your account and give most of it to us. So we want to thank our 92 patrons, including James, House of Cards, listener. James has 92 patrons over there.
That's right. Patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up, it's a voluntary subscription. This podcast is free, but if you want to support us, you certainly can. Any dollar amount you want from $1 up. Throw a bunch of zeros in there. We won't mind.
We won't mind at all.
Thanks, James, for being one of our 92.
That answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, youtube.com/AVRant, where we will not let you leave comments because YouTube...
And you know what? Even the comments over on our webpage, if they're just facetious and you're being a troll about it, that doesn't go on the show either.
I don't know about that. You remember there was a guy who was going around and just constantly downvoting every single one of our podcast episodes. The algorithm over at YouTube does not care if the vote is up or down. It counts the same as positive interaction towards our podcast.
That's right. We were interacted with, so it's all gravy.
It's all good. So go over there, downvoters. We don't care. Come at me, bro.
That's right.
Contact Rob directly. Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is @AVRant_Tom, which may or may not have anything on it anymore these days. Who knows? I may start tweeting again. The last time I went to Twitter, it was sort of like opening a door in Backdraft. It just sort of exploded in my face. I went, woo, hot in there. Slammed the door real fast and walked away. Hands up.
And a lot of the baby Yoda memes seem to have died down already, so you don't even get that cuteness flooding you when you open it up.
So I am up to, in fact, last week we talked about that, and I couldn't remember. I had watched the first 2 episodes. Okay. I had already forgotten the second episode, but once I watched it again this weekend, I
You're
went,
like, oh
okay.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I saw this one, and I remember why I forgot it. It wasn't the most memorable thing on the planet. So I'm now 4 episodes in. I'm liking it more. The first episode, I was like, it was pretty good. The second episode, like I said, it was kind of forgettable.
We should say this is The Mandalorian on Disney Plus that we're talking about, because of course Disney Plus is not even available in most of the world still. So
right. So if it's not and you're pirating it, then you know what we're talking about.
That's right.
If we're not pirating it because you're me basically, because when I was in Australia, I didn't pirate anything, though I really, really wanted to. It's I think it's getting better.
Okay.
I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I do wish you would take that dang helmet off. It's a little
not gonna happen.
Well, I know, but okay. I don't see why they can't have him take it off when he's alone, because he does take it off when he's alone.
Spoilers.
You can't eat. It's not a spoiler. Yep. I mean, the guy has to eat. I mean, Darth Vader even takes this stupid helmet off. He's got to go in that weird black egg thing from Empire, but it happens. All right, let's see here. Some more listeners of the week, those that supported the podcast in a way that was other than financial. James hopped on the SVS PB12 NSD Black Friday deal again this year, because apparently
he did it last year. Why not do it again?
Of them, someplace that they just like, holy crap, we found some more. It's like a lost.
Yeah, I don't know how it keeps happening, but yeah, I'm happy when it does, so I'm fine to promote it.
So anyways, we mentioned it, so it came back again this year. Like I said, I have no idea how. It's like 2 generations ago now. And he let SVS know we set them their way once more. Andrew brought an X3600H from Gibby's Electronics Supermarket in Canada and emailed them to let us know it was our recommendation. I'm sure that went to the black hole of customer service that is Gibby's.
Gibby's is pretty good. They're not like just a gigantic big box store. They talk to you one-on-one.
I know nothing about that. And Damien said he had a couple of hiccups when placing his Ascend acoustic speaker order, but Dina, not our Dina, but a different Dina,
that's right,
who handles their customer service, was very patient and diligent and got everything sorted out for him, which just made him feel confident about them as a company and thankful that he decided to go with them for his basement home theater speakers. She wrote back to tell them it was our recommendation and little else that convinced him to go with the Ascend. So yay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you to Damien, Andrew, and James. We appreciate the support. Yes, it's very nice. Andrew is double supporting us, triple supporting us. We mentioned this last week.
All right, hold on a second. Let me drink this coffee. It's extremely hot.
That's good pod.
Scalding. That's the.
You got to come to YouTube, though, and see what cup Tom is using this week, because it changes every week.
I've got like 3 cups
incentive
that I use. That's our incentive for YouTube.
But speaking of incentives,
and seeing our desynced lips to the,
that's right,
to the audio, when you really want to be irritated,
it progressively gets worse as the thing goes on.
Oh man. Okay, so speaking of Patreon, we have a prize draw. One of our Patreon supporters, Andrew, wants to help us reach a goal of 100 Patreon supporters by Christmas. To help us get there, just wanted to donate a handmade collectible of a sci-fi themed model that he has built. He has a selection of models available. So once we get to 100 Patreon subscribers, he would like us to draw one name, and we'll let them choose which model they would like to receive from him. We've seen the list. It's quite extensive.
Yep.
It's not just Star Wars, though mostly
it is not.
There's also Star Trek. There's at least one from Battlestar Galactica.
That's right. Yep. Now, the images he sent us are all Star Wars related, but just in case people were looking at the Star Trek one from last week, here are some more. And he's got his hand in a couple of them to show you approximately what kind of size you're dealing with. These are very nice. Very cool.
The Interceptor TIE Fighter is like a handful, but the X-Wing is massive.
Yeah.
So, I don't know about the other two. It's hard to tell. But very good. Very exciting. Mm-hmm. So. And we will be having our interview this week, I guess. Is that in the news down here someplace? Or
well, yeah, it's a little bit late for anybody to send in questions at this point. But yeah, we'll be having an interview tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday, December the 10th. Wednesday, December the 11th, we'll be talking to Phil Jones from Sound United. So look forward to that.
Yeah, Phil Jones, Sound United. They own who? Denon and Marantz? Who else?
Denon, Marantz, Class A, Polk, Definitive Technology, Boston Acoustics, Hios, and possibly others. Those are the ones I'm aware of. We'll find out tomorrow. That's one of our questions.
And I don't think it's on our list. My biggest question is like, how much control or how much oversight do they have of these different products You know what I mean?
Well,
As
then you
far
should
as-
ask him tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to. Well, I'm asking. I'm telling them. I'm saying it right now, so it sticks in my brain. But how much, oversight do they have of each one of these? Do they go into Class A and say, "Yeah, it looks nice, but dude, does it have to be so expensive?" Or they go into Polk and say, "No, you got to hit this particular price point. So figure out how to hit this."
Or said
price
another
point
way, how
once we-
much autonomy does each individual brand name have?
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll find out.
I'll find out tomorrow. All right. In the news, SVS just announced their new 2000 Pro Series subwoofers this morning at 9 a.m., probably Pacific time.
That's right.
Yeah, whatever. I did see it on Facebook, so it was posted already.
And it's on their website. So, yeah, we're all good to talk about.
2000 Pro. So there's all sorts of videos and stuff, and me and my kids watched them last night. The videos are terminally boring. No offense, Gary. Sorry. But they just go on and on and on. But this is going to replace the 2000 series models, bringing the SVS app and more powerful DSP control down to the lowest price points yet. Their complete redesign, new 12-inch woofers, 550-watt amp, and new cabinets. It's the same amp or very similar amp that goes into the 16 series.
Well, it's closest to what's in the 3000 series right now.
3000,
It's the most similar to that, but at a lower wattage level. Not surprisingly, this is the 2000, not the 3000 series. But yeah, I mean, this isn't just a matter of they slapped a Bluetooth receiver and stuck an app on it. It's like, no, it's entirely new. The cabinet is now for the PB. We'll get into this a bit, but it's dual ported now, so things have changed. Yeah.
So the sealed SB2000 Pro is rated at 19 hertz, which is, I think, 1 hertz lower than the 2000 was, and goes for $800, and it's $900 if you want the piano black shiny finish. The ported PB2000 Pro, which is now dual ported, digs down to 16 and starts at $900. Does it get a piano black finish?
I didn't see it mentioned. I didn't see it on the website as of yet. I'm guessing it probably will. Should just mention back with the sealed one, it's available in gloss white as well. So previously, if you wanted a white finish from SVS, you were stuck with the 1000 series. And seemingly over in Europe, you could get an SB2000 in white. But now the SB2000 Pro, definitely available in a white finish. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, the big PB2000, I think it's even bigger than the PB2000 Pro. I think it's even bigger than the PB2000 was. Dual ported now, which didn't used to be the case. So it looks like if you want to call it slightly shrunk, even though it's still huge compared to the PB3000, but very similar to the PB3000 all around now. Yeah.
So the ported PC2000 Pro cylinder comes with sound path isolation feet and also digs down to 16 hertz, starting at $950. Yeah. So we're still under $1,000.
That's right.
But we're creeping up a little bit here, but not much. I mean, the 2000 series was already around this price point anyway, so it's not a serious increase in price, but it's there's definitely some more performance there. That port is freaking huge.
It is. That is an enormous port on the back of the PC2000.
The PC2000 port, I was like, how does that not affect the structural integrity of the cylinder?
We should say PC2000 Pro at this point, yeah. But, you can see how it doesn't because even the cylinder is braced inside. Got a cutaway image that I'm showing on YouTube right now. So the big feature, of course, to take away from this, if you just want the one headline feature, is app support now in the 2000 Pro series. That didn't used to be the case. This leaves the 1000 series as the only series from SVS that doesn't have app support. I wonder what the next update to their lineup could potentially be in a few months.
Could we figure it out? Let's consult our
Don't know if there's a pattern here. It started with the PB16 Ultra, and then the 4000 series came out, and then the 3000, and now the 2000 Pro. Very tough to put that together.
I'm flummoxed. Could be anything. So Plex added a bunch of free ad-supported movies and TV shows from Warner Brother and Lionsgate. So all of your DC extended universe needs.
I don't know if any of that is in there. I don't think so.
You didn't want to watch them anyways. So what's different from other free services like IMDb TV or the Roku channels that they launched in over 200 countries? The available titles do vary by region. So you're also sharing your viewing data while using this free service, but Plex assures everyone that Hollywood studio and advertising partners won't have any access or visibility into the content or metadata that our users have in their personal media collection, which kind of...
To which I say, sure. Right.
So the idea here, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, what they're starting off with is saying, all we really want to know is what's being watched and how many times. We don't care by region. We
and
don't care who's watching
ad data as well, since the
Yeah.
ads are inserted. You have no choice about it. You can't skip them. You can't get around them. Having a Plex pass that you've paid for doesn't get rid of the ads or even just
And God
lessen
help
the
you if
amount.
it's like Hulu, where it's the same freaking ad
I
over.
don't know. It
over
probably is. I haven't
over
tried this
again.
at all. I don't want to try this, but because I don't want them. Well, you know what? I mean,
did
I'm
one
sure they're
movie on-
peeping in on my data no matter what at this point. So
Right. I just assume.
yeah.
I did one movie on Crackle one time,
Mhm.
and it was the same thing. It was the same ad, and it was like every 5 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me. No, I mean, it breaks up the flow of the movie for sure.
course.
But the irritation of hearing that same music,
Yeah.
start up, like the first time you're like, okay, it's an ad. Oh, I kind of like this ad, or whatever. Maybe you hate it. The second time you're like, oh, it's the same one. Third time you're like, oh God. But fourth or fifth time, you start to reevaluate how much you really want to see this movie. And I was watching that Frank Miller directed movie. It's
Sin
Spirit,
City?
maybe? No.
Oh.
Frank Miller did direct since
Oh, okay.
he helped with it, but it looks like Sin City, but I think it's called The Spirit or something.
There was one like that, yeah.
Awful.
Uh-huh.
It was terrible. I'm like, I never thought that
That's
Samuel
why it's
L.
free.
Jackson could be a bad movie, could be a bad actor, but he was terrible in this simply because of how bad the directing was. And no offense to Frank Miller, I mean, whatever, but dude, it was so bad. All right, so Clara on Twitter wanted to know how to get rid of it since it destroyed her Plex interface. Get rid of what?
This new free movies within Plex, because it just shows up as soon as you do the update, whether you want it or not. There it is, right on your front page, taking up your interface. What I looked at is, so over in Plex now, all your navigation takes place on the left-hand side now. That's what they've done with all of their various Plex apps.
Okay.
So you scroll over to the left, and it brings up a little menu that comes up, like most other streaming services are doing these days. So they're kind of consistent with like what Netflix and Disney Plus looks like on that front. But it has now added a movies and TV section to your list of things on the left. Now, if you had already set up a manual folder called Movies and TV, because you might have, it'll be a second one listed as Movies and TV with an ampersand sign for the and. So what you can do is go over to the three dots next to that and unpin it from your start menu. Now, that gets rid of it from your start menu, and when you do that, it does seem to remove all of the recommendations and advertising for it from your home page, which of course is the first thing you see. So if that is what was bothering you, just unpinning it from your start menu does seem to get rid of that worst of the worst. But you can't get rid of it entirely. At least I couldn't find a way to do it. If you go to the More section in Plex, it's still there. So I don't know any way to erase it entirely from your Plex interface, because it's part of Plex now. Yeah.
No.
And it's on the player side, not the server side. So, yeah, that's how it goes.
Okay. I'm deleting emails. I should have done this beforehand.
Yes.
All right. It's been confirmed that the Ultra HD Blu-ray release of Gemini Man, that's that Will Smith movie.
It is. The
playing
Ang Lee
him.
directed Will Smith movie.
Man, I used Ang Lee, man. I used to really like that dude. And then I haven't seen a movie by him that I really liked in quite some time. So maybe this will be the one. It will be in 60 frames per second. So for everyone who missed it in theaters, you'll be able to see high frame rate for yourself and compare your opinions to Rob's take and possibly discover that you need higher bandwidth HDMI cable. So 60 frames per second. Okay.
Yep, 60 frames per second. HDR.
What was your opinion? I don't remember.
My opinion overall was I found it quite interesting. I'm not against high frame rate, and I think there's things to learn, things to adjust as we go along. I thought Mary Elizabeth Winstead was the standout in the entire movie, and yeah, it's interesting. I'm interested to hear other people's opinions of it, because I don't think a lot of people saw it in theaters, because not a ton of theaters were showing it that way, and the ones that were only showing it that way for like 1 week, because the movie was not super popular.
Maybe you still don't have an OLED TV, but if you go to Singapore between December 6th and 22nd and solve Coca-Cola's Galactic Hunt, oh my God, Galactic Hunt Star Wars tie-in promotion, you might be able to get your hands on one of their 8,000 bottles with OLED lightsaber artwork on the labels.
Yep. So they said these are labels with printed batteries and printed OLED lights, you actually have to hold the label and your hand connects the circuit. So it's not that these are lit up all the time, but when you hold your, I don't know if there's specific places to put your thumb and finger or something like that, but
sure,
I'm sure there is. Your hand completes the circuit that lights up the lightsabers. There, I mean, hey, you want OLED? All you got to do is fly to Singapore, like right now, and solve this contest. Get your hands on one of those 8,000. I thought that was fun.
That's going to be a collector's edition.
Of course.
That's 100% going to be a collector's edition. All right, Andrew. Let's get into the questions here. Do we have anything else to discuss? I feel like we have something else to discuss. We just got something from Denon saying they're releasing new speakers tomorrow. I think it's, is it embargoed?
Don't mention that, Tom.
I didn't get
embargo. That. Or maybe I did, but I haven't looked at my emails since I started the podcast.
Anyways, I just got it. It doesn't say anything about embargo. So, no, it doesn't. So that's fine. We'll be talking about that to Phil tomorrow as well.
Maybe. We don't have time to talk to him about that.
Andrew says he's a firm believer that marketing claims made by expensive cable brands are a bunch of snake oil, but he's using a pair of Paradigm monitor to series towers in the matching center. He hooked them up using mono-price bulk speaker wire and Amazon Basics banana plugs that he connected himself. He's fairly sure the mono-price speaker wire was 16 gauge. For purely aesthetic reasons, he wanted black speaker wire instead. He bought some pre-terminated Amazon Basics black speaker wire. They're 12 feet long with gold-plated banana plugs already attached at both ends. After swapping the speaker wire, he played the pink noise test tones from his AV receiver, and going from left to center to right, you could hear a slight difference in timbre from the speaker to speaker to speaker, and that bugged him a bit. So he reran the Odyssey. The distances, trim levels, and crossovers all remained identical to his previous results with the old speaker wire, but now the pink noise test sounded darn near perfect going from left, center to right. Barely any difference in timbre from at all from speaker to speaker. So now, with this new run of Odyssey, swapped back to his old speaker wire, and now there's a slight difference in timbre again. So the old speaker wire, run Odyssey, sounds good. Swapping the new speaker wire without changing Odyssey, and he hears a timbre difference across his front three. Run Odyssey with the new speaker wire, it sounds good again, but swap back to the old speaker wire without changing his Odyssey setup, and there's a timbre difference. So are his speaker wires making an audible difference? He doesn't want to believe they are because he's so against the marketing claims, but he can't help feeling like he's hearing it with his own ears. Is it because he cut and terminated his old speaker wire himself? Could those DIY connections be the cause for the difference he's hearing, or is it straight up just a difference in sound, all because of different speaker wire? So what he didn't tell us was how long the speaker wire is.
Well,
I doubt it's long enough to make a massive difference.
Yeah, the ones you can buy from Amazon are 12 feet long. So
it can't be longer than 12
I'm assuming it's the 12-foot long ones that they sell, because that's the only length that they sell.
So the audible difference that speaker wires can make is can only be negative. All right.
It can only attenuate something. That's all a wire could possibly do, is attenuate part of the signal, make it weaker.
That's right. It can't boost frequencies. No. It can cut things if there's some extra resistance in there someplace.
Yeah, and almost everything that a speaker wire would do would result in the high frequencies being attenuated. It's theoretically possible to attenuate the bass. I mean, that's how, let's see, which one does that? An inductor would let the bass through but attenuate the high, so a capacitor would attenuate the bass a little bit while letting the high frequencies through. That's what you do.
The batteries in the MIT ones
in a crossover. But the chances of actually making the capacitance of your speaker wires so high that it is attenuating your bass frequencies and not the high frequencies is very unlikely. So by and large, if a speaker wire does make a difference, and it can, it's not impossible for a speaker wire to make a difference.
Which is usually what those high-end speaker wires do, is they do something to them to solve the problem of resistance or of something, and by solving that problem they over-engineer it in that one direction, and then that harms other things, which can sometimes affect they add batteries or whatever too, so that can affect the sound. And then when you're dealing with esoteric speakers, which again are usually trying to solve a problem, which might be in a lot of cases, we want to use a single driver. So therefore, we have a driver with a huge horn inside of the inside of the cabinet, so that it does put out some bass. pairing those two things together, suddenly, where you're having some problems with the speaker might be solved somewhat by the wire that you're using. That's about the only time I can say that speaker wire is something you should choose based on your speaker. In your case, the only thing I can really come up with is that when you self-terminated, you could have done something that would have changed the resistance.
Well, I mean,
if you're using solder or something like that.
What is possible with those Amazon Basics banana plugs that he said he used, which look exactly like the Sewell Deadbolt banana plugs, which I like very much. But the way that you connect those is you feed the speaker wire in through the bottom of the barrel. The barrel unscrews so that the actual banana plug tip comes off, and then you splay the speaker wire out over the little piece of metal inside, and then tighten the banana plug tip back down. Now, a lot of people, they don't actually splay out the speaker wire evenly. If you do this kind of rushed where you just sort of jam it through and then put the thing back down and just tighten it down, and it does clamp and it does hold, but it means your speaker wire isn't like evenly splayed around making good contact with the little piece of metal inside. You could end up with higher resistance just from a lack of surface area contact of copper to copper, which is what you want for that good electrical conductivity. That is theoretically possible, but I have another sort of question for Andrew here, because as far as I know, from what I read in his email, and I might be misinterpreting it or it might have been miswritten or whatever, but I think he was saying he was using the built-in test tones, like when you go to set your speaker trim levels, how it plays a test tone from inside the AV receiver. I think that's what he was using, and as far as I'm aware, Odyssey has no impact on that. That pink noise, whether Odyssey is on or off, having been run or not run, that pink noise is its own separate thing. It comes out of the AV receiver as is, not impacted by your Odyssey settings at all. As far as I'm aware, the built-in test tones, I don't believe they're affected by Odyssey. Not that I'm aware of. I believe that's the case. I could be mistaken. It's entirely possible, but...
Well, let's pretend that they are. It is. Okay?
That it is, okay.
If it's not, then the difference you're hearing is between your ears, which
could
very, very well be because of where you sat in the room.
That's right. It could be a positional thing, because if you are... I mean, you're talking about hearing a timbral difference from left to center to right. Now, that is super easy to do, especially with your center speaker that I imagine is not identical to your front speakers. It is obviously positioned differently, but I'm assuming it's below your TV or maybe above your TV, angled, maybe not angled, and probably horizontal. And so if you change your vertical position, your front to back position, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a lot, it is quite easy to sometimes hear a timbral difference from left to center to right, which could be entirely because of how you, the listener, were positioned, and nothing to do with the speakers or Odyssey or anything at all. And particularly if you're like listening hard for it, it's quite often that's what's going on, as opposed to an actual genuine something has changed difference.
So the question that you have asked is it possible that the speaker wire is what's making this difference? The answer is technically yes.
Right.
But we don't think it's super likely. Okay.
Agreed.
And we're not going to say that that you're not hearing the difference. We are saying that there could be other reasons why you're hearing that difference, and positioning in particular could be the most important one, especially if you've got your microphone set up for Odyssey right in your spot, and then you go sit next to it so that you can hear it, or you're standing in the room behind it or something. We're talking about some differences in where you're sitting and compared to where you would normally be sitting. Now, like I said, it could be, like Rob said, it could be that the termination of the wire, and one versus the other, could have been, far fewer strands were being cut. So your 16 gauge wire is more like 22 gauge, or 25 gauge or something like that. Yep. Then, of course, even though you're only going 12 feet, I mean, your self-terminated wire could have been a 300-foot spool of wire for all we know on the ground.
Yeah, indeed. We do not know every possible detail of this. I mean, it might have been skinnier, too. Who knows? Maybe it was 18-gauge wire or 20-gauge wire, which at 12 feet shouldn't make any difference. But there's other variables that are possible here. So, yeah, on a technical level, it can. Yep.
It can happen. So, in general, though, I would I think it's still pretty easy to agree that the wire really didn't make a appreciable difference. This is something that you can only hear with pink noise and was completely nullified by Odyssey afterwards.
Right. Which even
so
that is kind of suspect to me because...
Well, it's suspect to Rob, but let's pretend that
Right.
Odyssey did make a difference there. In which case, you're like, it's so minor that even Odyssey can take care of it. Therefore, this is not the I'm going to go spend $2,000 per linear
Definitely
foot
not.
of wire.
No.
I am going to have to go find my AC and turn it on because it is roasting in here. But I will get to this next. Oh my God. It's so long.
Well, there's multiple parts, so you can read the first part, then go.
All right, Nathan. Nathan says, YouTube channel Home Theater Gurus posted an instructional video about gain matching your subwoofers. Is that just volume leveling? Because
there's the volume dial on the back of the sub is a gain knob, but this is the term they use, so I'm going with it.
All right, Nathan would like to hear our thoughts on what they had to say. They pointed out via RoomEQ Wizard measurements how the frequency response of the two subs placed in diagonally opposite corners were very, very different at the main listening position. But when the two subs were combined and playing together, the merged frequency response was much better at that seat. That's certainly what we've been saying all along, so no surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
But they made the point that if you just look at the individual responses of the two subs, one of them had a big dip across a wide range of frequencies, while the other sub had consistently higher output over most of the frequency range. Again, combined, the merged frequency response looked quite good. But since the common advice is to level match your subs individually using an SPL meter, or if you're using Odyssey's sub EQHT, it attempts to level match the subs independently, they said you might end up with that first sub with this big dip in the frequency response set too loud, while the other sub might be set too quiet.
Right. Well, they're saying the room interaction is resulting in one sub by itself having a frequency response that is not. It's not the output of the sub by itself. It's the result of. That's where that sub is positioned. That's how much it's outputting, and this is where the measurement is being taken. Whether that's with an SPL meter or with the Odyssey mic, and so you're not getting. Essentially, they're saying you're not getting a true reading of the output at that point. You're getting a room result reading, so you might turn the gain up too much because you're setting the gain, the volume knob beforehand, and you're trying to account for the room when you don't really have to account for the room because you're using dual subs. So again, it's an interesting.
It's an interesting thought that's completely negated by the fact that they took measurements of both the subs together and the frequency response looks good. The way this works together.
But that was after their setup. They're saying if they hadn't done this gain matching, this careful gain matching, realizing that the first sub wasn't actually as quiet as the SPL meter is saying, and the second sub isn't actually as loud as the SPL meter is saying, that they had to do this careful gain matching to get that combined response. This is what they're saying.
I see what they're saying. Mm-hmm. It's just not the way it works, though. So they have a point. Do we agree that Odyssey's automatic level matching or simply level matching manually using the SPL meter might deliver less than optimal results because of the individual frequency responses of each subwoofer? Honestly, the math that has been done, I'm starting to sweat. The math that's been done, I am literally sweating in this room, and I want to drink coffee, but I can't because it's just going to make me hotter. The actual math that's been done, shows level matching the sub, even though the subs are at, putting out different responses. Mm-hmm. The fact that when they come together, they're additive. They work together. So I don't see that this is going to make an appreciable difference. I see that it's going to make.
I would say they have a point if...
Okay, you talk. I got to do this AC thing.
I would say they have a point if... they used a particular example where the dip that was happening in subwoofer 1, it wasn't just at a narrow range of frequencies. It was across a lot of frequencies, and it was a large amount of decrease, and then the polar opposite for the other sub. And that, I would venture to say, is not actually typical. They found an example where this is true. I do not doubt that this is a real example. It absolutely could be the case. But I would venture to say that in most of the subs that I've measured or even just listened to a bass suite play them and listen with my own ears, you don't typically get this wide frequency range and large amount of dip in one, and similarly but opposite large amount of gain in the other. So they found the scenario where I can say, they have a bit of a point here. The thing is, if you did your totally normal procedure, even if you relied on sub EQ HT, which isn't really our advice anymore, but even if you did that, you would notice darn quick that like, hey, that back sub is just way too loud all the time. Like, even though I went through the normal procedure that I've been told to do, followed Rob's 12-step guide or followed sub EQ HT's instructions, it's just blatantly obvious that one of these subs is way louder than the other. It's like, at that point, well, there's a clue that you need to go back and readjust things. I don't think this is something you have to do every single time, because they found the scenario where I can agree with them, but if you were in that scenario, it would be so blatantly obvious. That's my take on that.
All right, so they suggested that one fix would be to look at the individual measurements of each sub and find one common frequency where neither sub has any obvious hump or dip, then use that single test tone along with an SPL meter to level match the subs. Do we think that's a good idea? I think in general, it's not going to be.
That's fine.
For most applications, I don't think this is going to be necessary. I think that overall the subs are going to have varying degrees of dips and humps, which will sometimes overlap and sometimes won't. And when you just take a pink noise out of there and level match them that way, it's going to be close enough. But
honestly,
sure.
this suggestion is fine, because we're assuming you're not using like really horrible subwoofers that have really weird frequency response of their own. Right. We'll put that possible eventuality out of consideration. If you got a pretty good sub that all on its own is playing pretty reasonably evenly, then yeah, if you were to find a common frequency where you don't have an obvious hump or obvious dip in either or, and you just use that one tone, just a sine wave tone and an SPL meter to level match, yeah, that'll work. That's a fine suggestion. I'm okay with that.
It's just more work.
Yeah.
That a lot of times people try to, and by people I mean content creators, try to differentiate themselves from the other people out there and make themselves experts by coming up with a more convoluted way to do a thing that, while maybe technically correct, doesn't actually help that many people. And in many ways, it becomes a gatekeeper to people doing the thing that is most important.
But we're not talking about
matching your sub.
Equalization at this point. We're just talking about the level matching part of the process.
Yeah, but you're also talking about using a Room EQ wizard.
Yeah.
You're talking about doing measurements, and you have to have a microphone. You have to have a lot of times an audio interface, depending on what kind of microphone you have. So you're talking about doing a lot more stuff that, our suggestion, you can literally do with the microphone that you have with your if you have
your auto setup.
Your auto setup, you can do it with that.
Even a very basic one.
Yeah. Our suggestion, and yes, sometimes but I've been doing this 12 years. This is our 12th year.
Yeah,
I've never had somebody.
It's never come up
that somebody's come back and said, I level matched the way I was supposed to, and my one sub is so loud compared to the other one that it's got to be wrong. What am I doing wrong? No one has ever said those words to us. I'm sure it can happen. It is theoretically possible, but in the vast majority of the cases, this is steps that do nothing to your final result. So sure, they have a point and they are technically correct,
right?
But I feel like it's more detrimental to getting people to get good bass than helpful. Let's go on. Then they talk about the gain matching 2 or more subs as opposed to level matching. They talk about how some people are using different model subwoofers together in one room. Not everyone has identical subs, so they suggest picking one spot in your room and one by one putting each subwoofer there, playing pink noise or a test tone, and adjusting the gain knob on the back of each sub so they all measure the same SPL. This way, even if you're using different models of subwoofers, now you're starting with them all outputting the same SPL for a given signal. What's our take on that? Well, you're going to put both the subs in that spot?
I know. This ends up being a moot point because I get it. Like, yeah, you're starting with them all responding with similar SPL to the given signal, but then they're going to be in different positions in the room, and you're going to do the level matching process that they recommend, that's not where the subwoofer volume knobs are going to end up anymore. So, that one's a little bit strange.
To me, if you're going to do this, you might as well just do it by ear. Just put them where they're going to be, and then play a test tone and say that one's too loud, turn it down some, and then get them close that way. Yeah, I mean, if this is what you're attempting to do is just get them close enough so that you don't have to move the knob that much later on. I don't know. This seems like a ridiculous suggestion, but whatever. So furthermore, they say they'd prefer to just set the volume gain knob on every sub to some arbitrary position that is easy to remember, like exactly halfway. Then one by one, put each sub in the exact same spot in the room, play pink noise or test tone, measure with the SPL meter, and use a mini DSP to adjust the gain for each sub so that they all measure the same SPL. That way you never have to worry about the precise position of the volume knob on the back of each sub. They're thinking kids or subs being moved or cleaned or something. What do we think of that? I still don't see why you put them all in the same spot. You can do this. You don't have to do this with a mini DSP. A lot of times you can just do it with the trim levels on your AV receiver.
Well, we're suggesting these days to not use independent subwoofer output,
right.
Because that, as far as doing the EQ goes, it complicates things. So if you're
That's true.
If you're Y splitting out of a single subwoofer output, which is what we tend to be recommending these days, you're Y splitting out of a single subwoofer output. So you just have the one trim level as the signal going out, and then they're saying you're gonna level match or gain match or whatever you're gonna end up doing at some point somewhere. But if you do it on the sub itself, the volume knob is gonna end up where it needs to end up. You could just mark it with a pencil. Now, if it ever moves, you can put it back there. That's my solution.
My solution is put the volume knob towards the wall and no one ever gets to touch it. How hard is that?
But what if they did, Tom? What if they did? If it was marked with a pencil, you'd be fine. The end.
See, you take something. This is so one of the things I do when I'm not doing this is I do leadership classes. I teach leadership classes for businesses and government employees and stuff. And oftentimes when you see these leadership gurus, they'll take something that one thing that works and makes sense, and they extrapolate it out into ridiculousness. And that's what's happening to me here. They took one thing that makes sense, which is, if you had a sub that at different ports in the room, one sub was, was boosted a lot and the other sub was cut a lot, you wouldn't get proper level matching. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, theoretically true. So then you can level match them this way. All right, also theoretically. Now stack them all on top of each other in one spot of the room and use me. What? What?
Yeah, the gain matching thing to me is, maybe they were thinking about the scenario where you've got like one really underpowered sub compared to the rest, and it's going to be a problem, at which point remove it from your system as opposed to trying to do this. Yeah. No, you're going to end up with them level matched if the room response when you were doing them one at a time is so egregiously bad that it results in completely uneven sound. You're going to notice it. Yeah. A lot of this is...
This is a solution for a problem that almost nobody has.
Right. Now, if it's there, okay.
Just do what we say. And then
honestly,
you end up with something else.
The one good tip is if you fall into this very small pool of people where this could be the case for you, doing their suggestion of using just a single sine wave test tone as opposed to pink noise solves the issue. Done.
Right.
That was a good suggestion. That's good.
The rest of it, just walk away. Tap's house construction is finally nearing completion after many delays and setbacks. Since he needed a sup pump and a place to hide his gear in his large open basement, his original plans for a false wall turned into a small utility space with a door for access up at the front of the theater. And all the extra construction costs meant he had to be careful with his home theater equipment budget, but he still put together an AVRant recommended selection of gear. So here it is. Instead of a JVC projector, he got the Epson Pro Cinema 6050 UB. That also included a chief mount and a spare lamp, so he's quite happy about landing that. It will be projecting its image onto a 95-inch Seymour AV Center Stage XD acoustically transparent screen. Very nice screen. Mm-hmm. Behind the screen, embedded in the utility space wall now, is vertical Ascend CMT 340 SE for a center, two more of those on either side for his front, left, and right. While they obviously aren't meant to be in-wall speakers, their rear ports are now firing into the utility space. His surrounds are HTM 200 SEs, again Ascends, and four mono-price in-ceiling speakers round out the Atmos speaker setup. A pair of SVS PC2000 cylinder subs handle the low end, placed on the left and right sides of his theater, and it's all powered by Yamaha RXV 2885, which is identical to the 2080 5.2.4 receiver model, except for its price is lower because it's part of the RXV series and doesn't have the fifth foot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
The RXA series always has that fifth foot in the middle of the bottom.
Yeah, because that makes it more steady.
Yeah, take away the foot, and apparently the price drops by about $200 or $300.
So his front speakers look like they are embedded in the wall, but there's a
Yes,
door to the right of his screen. So
that's right.
the ports are firing back out into that.
Yeah.
Now, I mean,
So that's going to
in the
reduce the bass that you hear
yeah,
from those speakers. That's what that's going to do. It's not going to prevent them from working or something, though.
right. So just for everybody else, in general, a port is meant as an additional source of sound for the speaker itself.
Yeah.
It's a design choice, but what it does is it gives air within the cabinet a place to escape from through the port, which also tends to add bass.
Yeah,
so
because the port resonates at some frequency.
Yeah. By putting these in the wall, with all that bass is now not in the room, it's outside of the room, it's in a different room, which is fine, but it now means that its low end is not as low as it was before. The fact that you're going to be crossing these over at 80 hertz anyways, not going to be a problem.
Probably negates all of that, and it's almost certainly fine.
Yeah. So he's got cylinder subs to either side, looks like midpoints of the side walls. He's got, you can't see the center channel because it's behind the screen. And then he's got in-wall speakers right above his subs, it looks like.
As his surrounds.
As a surrounds.
And in ceilings, so 5.2.4.
I did not see the in ceilings in this picture. Oh, I see them now.
Yeah,
yes.
up at the top there.
White, round white things that blend really well into a ceiling. His walls are like a light gray or light tan, it looks like. So, and the ceilings are white. It's got soffits on either side, and it looks very nice. So he hasn't purchased any acoustic treatment yet, other than a rug that will go in front of his sectional sofa. It is hardwood or something that looks like hardwood. Could be that tile stuff. Yeah. Could be laminate. I don't know. He's strongly considered DIY, but he's also seen some very inexpensive acoustic panels being sold on Amazon. What would be our recommendation for the acoustic treatment front? Well, I mean, if you're going to DIY, there's lots of ways to do that. We have, recommendations and suggestions and guides on AVRant that can help you out with that. Even if you want to put posters or pictures or whatever you want.
You could do it as a printed panel. You could get images printed onto acoustically transparent fabric and then wrap that printed fabric around, a very simple frame with some 2 or 3 or 4 inch thick insulation inside of that frame that you build yourself. So if you want these as images, that is certainly something you can do. But if you want it all made for you, I will point you to Acoustimac. Their prices are a little bit lower than Gix, but not only do they offer printing as an option, which does increase the price, they also have like ready-made stock art that they have ready to go. It's already like stock images or just patterns. So if you're thinking, I didn't want something really plain, I want something a little bit more visually interesting, getting something that's like a patterned fabric on an acoustically on an acoustic panel is a really nice solution. Sometimes Acoustimac also has like suede finishes, so it looks a little bit different, has that little bit different texture to it. So I like recommending that when you're thinking maybe a little bit more visually interesting. I would steer you away from the cheap stuff on Amazon because that is almost certainly their foam panels. Yeah, those are the really cheap ones.
Oh man, there's a YouTuber I watch who just streams game. I put it on in the background because he doesn't talk about the game he's playing. He talks about other stuff. Sort of it's just a white noise when I'm cooking or something like that, and I'll throw him up there. But he's just moved to a new place and he's got acoustic foam all over his studio, and it's just keeps falling off the wall. It's supposed to stick up there. It doesn't stick. It keeps falling off the wall while he's doing it, and it's okay for voice.
Yeah, for a vocal booth, it's
vocal stuff. It's fine, but I keep thinking, man, if you just spent, a fraction of what you spent on these millions of little, 1 foot by 1 foot panels that he's been trying to stick all over this place on one acoustic panel in front of you or one acoustic panel behind you, it would have been a million times better.
But here in Tap's room, I mean, the other thing you can do, we've talked about, you can put up simple like 1x2 framing that you just mount directly onto your wall, perhaps on that soffit area as well, and you just put some very inexpensive insulation into that frame that you built, put fabric over the whole thing. You don't even necessarily need to make individual panels. You can like span the whole left wall, span the whole, what's available of your front wall. Because I mean, keep in mind, one of the ideas we had originally was a false wall up front, and basically that whole false wall was going to be insulation. Well, that plan is gone now, unfortunately. So I mean,
that front left corner looks like it could
oh yeah, I mean the left you certainly want to treat because your right side is basically open.
Yeah.
So you definitely want that left side treated. But I mean, this is pretty hard and reflective everywhere in this room. So it's just one of those cases where anywhere is good.
I like a chunk trap up the front left corner. I like a nice thick 4-inch panel if you can get it on your left wall, kind of
as
or
big
maybe
as you can, honestly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Two by right by each other across from that open doorway.
Yeah.
To kind of simulate that same thing. Anything behind you that you possibly can. We don't know.
Yeah.
So
I mean that column where you see his right surround speaker. So if you're coming like back in the photo towards our viewpoint, that's open too. So that's just a column there. It's not like a continuous wall from that point on. So his whole right side, essentially, except for a column and a bit of the stairway, is open. You definitely want to treat the left-hand side of your theater. I would try to put something on all of that soffit area if you can, and that probably wouldn't be panels. That would probably be some, very simple framing you put up there yourself and just insulation and fabric over the whole thing.
Yeah. So this is not an enclosed space behind the theater area. The space continues back for a bar or a lounge area. It gets open on the right side to another room that's nearly as large. You can control the actual lights in the theater area, but with openings on the right-hand side, you won't have total light control. Do we have any suggestions for lighting control ideas that help him get the best image from his projection setup? Curtains.
Yep. And this is something that Lee and I discussed a couple weeks back. If you go motorized, this can turn into a real slick deal when you hit a button on your Harmony remote and the lights in your theater area dim and your motorized curtains close, and it's all in response to one button push, and it can be very slick and appealing.
There's a restaurant we have in town called Noble Crust, which I think is a chain. It might be a small local chain, but there's definitely more than one of them. But what they've done around their bar area is every surface around their bar area, like even underneath the bar, it's all acoustic panels. I think it's only about 1 inch thick. But the idea is just to cut down on all the reflections, because of course they have glass up there and everything else, mirrors behind the bar. But above the bar, underneath where people's feet are, all of that, acoustic panels. So, taking your bar area and having in mind that you're going to be putting acoustic panels underneath everything, around everything that you can.
Yep.
It ends up giving it kind of a soft look, which is not a bad look. It could all be one color, just as if you were to paint all that. And instead of having paint and painted walls, you have acoustic panels.
Yep.
And if you can get 2 inches, that'd be great. If it's just 1 inch, it's better than nothing. So it will help cut down all those reflections.
Yep. So as far as motorized curtains go, now I know Tap is using the Google Assistant throughout his house as his voice control. So there is a company called I don't know if it's MeTex or MeTex. They either capitalize everything or don't capitalize anything. So I'm not sure exactly, but it's MeTex with an S on the end of it. They sell inexpensive motorized remote controllable curtains with an additional module you can add onto them that makes it work with She Who Shall Not Be Named from Amazon and the Google Assistant. So I'm like, that checks all the boxes, and I know Tap is price conscious, so unlike some of the ridiculously expensive motorized curtain options that I've seen, this is a affordable one that checks all the boxes, so check that out. We'll have the link for it at avrant.com.
All right. Carlos just upgraded his TCL 6 Series to a 65-inch LG C9 OLED. He's got it connected to a Denon X4300 receiver, and he's having trouble with HDMI ARC, audio return channel. His ARC was working fine with his TCL, so he's pretty sure it isn't his Denon. And he is able to get sound to come out of the LG built-in speakers when he uses its built-in apps. So he's pretty sure the signal and apps are working. Just can't get the sound from the built-in apps to his Denon via ARC. Or ARC. He looked around online and found many other confused people with similar problems, but no working solutions. Can we help?
Now, I can tell you the answer to that, which is I emailed him back, and he emailed back after that and said, I got it working. So the answer to can we help was yes.
Okay. So what did we help him with?
I don't know which of the following things was the solution. He didn't let me know, because there are a multitude of things that, unfortunately, you have to check all the boxes to make sure. So first, the super pedantic answer, because Lord knows things have gone stranger than accidentally plugging your HDMI cable into the not correct port, especially when there's a whole line of, 10 of them on the back of that AV receiver. not impossible to plug your HDMI cable into the incorrect port. Only one of the HDMI outputs on the back of the Denon is the ARC port, so you got to make sure it's the right one. Monitor one, and only one of the input ports on the LG OLED is the ARC port.
That would be the mistake I would make right there.
So
that would be the one.
that's
I would probably get everything else right before I got that right. I would get all the settings and everything else. I would have figured it out.
They're like,
but
I put it into HDMI 3. Whoops.
Yeah. I'm like, because hey, I don't look at the back of that thing until it's already mounted and everything, and then I just fish around for the closest HDMI port. And if I can't get into
and since
that
they put
one,
USB ports like above and below, if you're just feeling as you put it in from the side, it's very easy to go in the wrong port. So please don't anyone ever feel like you have made a boneheaded mistake by plugging in the wrong port, because it is easy to do, and Tom and I have both done it. So that's not even that is not even the tip of the boneheaded iceberg of things I have done that were boneheaded. Believe me, if a mistake can be made, they used to send me stuff to see if I could break it, because I would always find some way that it was like, well, it's not working. Right.
That they're like, we've never had this. How many times I've had manufacturers tell me they've never had this problem before with anybody else. If I just got paid on that alone, I would be out of this business.
You are the the beta tester. But now you go into your LG, you go into its settings, you go into its I can't remember if it's called sound or audio, but it'll be one of those two. And you can choose the output setting, and you want to make sure that you set it to HDMI ARC as the output. But then there is an additional setting under that says, well, what type of HDMI ARC output? Do you want auto, which seems like it should be obvious? Do you want PCM, which you're like, no, I don't want that. I don't want everything turned into PCM. Or do you want pass-through? And they even give you a warning when you say pass-through that says, this might not work with everything. So you're like, ooh, nope, that's the one you want. You want pass-through. You don't even want auto. You want it set to pass-through. I think that was probably the setting he didn't have, because it seems like the one that was very likely.
Buried.
But when you do that, it should automatically tell you that SimpLink has now been activated. SimpLink is LG's name for HDMI CEC. It has to be on. HDMI CEC won't work with the LG unless HDMI CEC is turned on. They call it SimpLink. So on the chance that it was not automatically turned on, you go into the general part of the LG settings, you look for the SimpLink section, and you make sure that SimpLink has been, in fact, turned on inside of the LG. That should be everything on the LG side. It was probably the HDMI ARC being set to auto instead of pass-through. I'll bet you that's what it was. But over on the Denon, there are settings to check there, too. You go into its setup, you go to its video section, even though we're dealing with audio. No, you go to the video section, because that's where the HDMI section is. And under the HDMI section, under video, in the Denon setup, they have broken out many different parts of HDMI CEC. It isn't just one setting that you turn off or on. There are multiple different parts of it you can turn on independently. So I like to leave HDMI control turned off, because that is the part of the HDMI CEC thing within Denon that switches inputs automatically on you or turns things on and off in response to the other device turning on and off. And I want to use a Harmony remote, and I want to turn things on and off using my Harmony, and I want to select what input I'm listening to with my Harmony and not have HDMI CEC overriding that stuff. But if HDMI control is turned off, like I would do in the Denon, then you can independently turn on just the audio return channel part of it, which of course you have to do in order for ARC to work. But if you do that, you have to manually press the TV audio button on your Denon remote, just like any other input. It won't automatically go to ARC when you're using an ARC source, because you've turned HDMI control off. If you turn HDMI control on, it should automatically go to the TV audio input when you start using an ARC source, but then you have to deal with all the HDMI CEC stuff. Yeah. Settings.
Exciting. All right. Let me go back to the questions here. I kind of phased out there. What should his OLED light setting be for SDR, HDR, and Dolby Vision? There are conflicting settings listed across the web.
Yes, and this is a C9, so we have to keep that in mind. Now, let's start with the easy one, which is HDR. For HDR mode, the OLED light setting should be 100. That's where it starts. There's really no way to move it. I guess you could move it down, but yeah, it stays at 100. The Dolby Vision setting, this is probably where you're getting conflicting reports, because the 2016, 2017, 2018 models all started with OLED light in Dolby Vision mode set to 50. and then you could move it up or down and it would dim or brighten the image as a whole, which was actually kind of a nice adjustment to be able to make. But they took it away in 2019, and now Dolby Vision starts at 100 for the OLED light setting, and that's where it needs to stay. If you want Dolby Vision to look brighter as a whole, you have to switch picture modes entirely. Use the Cinema Home mode instead of the Cinema mode, and that'll brighten the image as a whole. But you can't do anything with the OLED light in Dolby Vision in the C9, the 2019 OLED models from LG anymore. SDR. SDR is a bit tough because it depends on your ambient lighting conditions. There is no truly, well, I guess there is a truly correct setting, which is if you're in a pitch black room and you're limiting the maximum light output from the OLED to 100 nits, because we're dealing with standard definition, then the OLED light setting should be at 14. That is the correct setting for exactly 100 nits coming out of it. Most people are like, whoa, that seems shockingly low. So there's things to consider. If you keep it at 35 or lower, the automatic brightness limiter will never kick in. So if you are bothered by, I'm watching hockey and the whole thing, like it goes to the announcers and the image seems to brighten up, and then it goes back to the hockey rink where it's almost all white and the image like dims as a whole because of the automatic brightness limiter. If you keep the OLED light setting to 35 or lower, none of that'll happen. It turns the automatic brightness limiter off in effect. But some people still find that a bit low if you got fairly high light ambient light conditions. I like to suggest keeping it at 45 or lower. When you go higher than that, you start getting into above 200 nits, which shouldn't really be happening for SDR, for standard dynamic range. Clear as mud, eh?
Yeah, I wasn't paying any attention to that.
I know you weren't.
I was doing other things. Rob, not you, Rob W.
Mm-hmm.
We previously talked about Rob's TV upgrade option. He said he could spend as much as $5,000 for a 77-inch OLED, and that was a potential option. But of course, he could spend less or even go bigger if he opted for a QLED instead. After hearing our advice, he decided he was going to go with the OLED. But then Costco's Black Friday prices came along, and he still ended up with an OLED. But instead of a 77-inch, he couldn't pass up on the price they were offering for a 65-inch OLED instead. He could have bought 3 65 inches for the price of one 77. Well, if you could get 4, you could put them right next to each other and then
and have 8K resolution.
Have 8K
with just a little bit of borders in between.
Right? That's right. So he moved his seat closer, and he's feeling pretty good about the large amount of money he saved. He says the picture is astonishingly good, and he never thought there was anything wrong with his TLC 6 series, but now he's seen them side by side, and our advice was spot on. No going back from OLED now.
Yay.
The only thing slightly bugging him is it could have been bigger.
It could have. It does exist.
In his mind, he resigned himself to spending over $4,000 for the 77-inch, which seemed a bit nuts, but it was really what he wanted. But the price of the 65-inch was so good, it managed to change his mind. So he's curious, do we have any similar buying experiences we could share, and how did those ultimately turn out? There's potentially still some time for him to change his mind again. Well, okay, so I am like the king of buying almost what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it has taken me well more than half my life to finally get to the point of saying to myself, just buy what you want so that you won't be disappointed, because you will always be disappointed. But in your case, it's slightly different, because usually what I do is, instead of getting the one that I actually wanted, I get the one that's like the knockoff brand, not quite as good, but like half the price, right? And then I end up with this thing that I'm struggling with, and I kind of hate it, and I wish I'd gotten the thing that I had wanted, or it breaks really easily or whatever. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that you actually got the thing you wanted.
Sure.
It's just not in the size that you wanted.
That's true.
Okay. But what you really wanted was not the size. You wanted the field of view.
Yes, correct.
Okay. That's what you wanted. You wanted the field of view. So you solved that by saying, I'm moving my couch closer.
That's right.
Now I have the field of view. So in your case, the performance is in no way diminished. You know, the 77-inch to 65-inch, there's not going to be a huge difference in performance there, or even any difference in performance there. The only thing is that you can sit further away from the 77-inch and get the same field of view.
Yeah.
So I would say, just remember that. And
I mean, it's a lot. It's like $3,000 he saved. It's a lot of money.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am 100% behind this solution. Now, if you
I
had
mean,
said,
the other thing he could potentially do is take a little bit of the money that he saved, get one of those like scissor mounts, wall mounts, and
oh, right.
like move the TV out from the wall when you're watching
For
and
the
push it back.
$3,000 that you saved, you could probably buy one that you could press a button on a remote and it would come out towards you, and that would look cool. I mean, I would take that $3,000 and sink it all into subwoofers and
Oh yeah, I mean that can pay for a lot of other things.
motorized curtains and lighting and everything else. I mean, you're talking about a whole bunch of
Yeah, I mean, if this were like a
extra
$500 difference, I'd be like, that's one of those things. I'd be like, I'm probably gonna tell you because my experience has been, yeah. I mean, I've done this in the past too. Like when I really wanted my very first Pioneer plasma, I went with a Samsung plasma instead because it was so much cheaper.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a couple of years later, I bought a Pioneer plasma because that was what I had my heart set on the whole time. I don't know what is. I'm sure there's other examples where I've done a similar thing because that wasn't the only time.
Oh, I've totally done that.
But
I've totally done that.
I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, I mean, first of all, I do enough research on home theater stuff that I'm very confident in my own research at this point. And so I go, you know what? I know what I want. So unless I get what I want, it's just time to wait and save or wait for the prices to come down. I'm at that point now where I don't compromise at all anymore as far as home theater gear goes. But yeah, this is tough. This is like you can get the experience you were after and save $3,000. So yeah, that's so much money. I don't think you should return it in favor of spending $3,000 additional dollars to get the 77-inch. I think you found a good solution.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. He says there are a lot of picture setting options. He knows we've talked about OLED picture settings before, but could we please go over them again for him?
So instead of going through all of them, because there are a lot and not everybody wants to listen to me ramble through that for that long, even Tom might lose interest. I've
already lost interest.
I actually posted the settings that I use for my 2017 OLED. I made a post for that on avrant.com. We'll have the link directly for it in the show notes, or if you just want to Google AVRant OLED settings, it'll come up for you. But there are differences between the 2017 and the 2019, and I didn't know those at the time that I wrote this article. I guess I can go back in there and edit it. I don't want to because it's time. But instead, what I'll do is tell you the few differences that to look out for. So number one, your new 2019 has a whole bunch of stuff that's called AI. It's like AI like lighting, AI picture mode, AI sound, turn all of that crap off. None of it is actually AI. It's a bunch of if-then statements, and you don't want any of it because it's just going to mess with your images. So anything that says AI, turn it off. The Dolby Vision OLED light setting that I mentioned. So in the settings that I gave, I say set it to 50 or bump it up if you want a little bit more. You don't have that option now. It's stuck at 100. So that's in Dolby Vision. OLED light is 100. The color gamut for Dolby Vision can now be set to auto in the 2019 models. So now all of them are auto. That's not too difficult. The edge enhancer should now be off because they fixed it, because before they had it backwards where on was off and off was on.
All right.
And black frame insertion is a new feature for the 2019s. Leave it off because otherwise it flickers.
Why would you need that in an OLED?
I don't know. Gamers want it.
Gamers are dumb. Sorry, gamers.
But other than that, you can follow the rest of my settings and it'll all work.
Mitch got a JVC NX7 projector. It's spectacular. It's connected to his Marantz SR7011 receiver with 7.1.4 Atmos setup, and for Ultra HD Blu-rays, it's better than any commercial movie theater.
I would agree.
But with so much available via streaming services these days, he wants the best available streaming quality and experience too. He already owns an 2017 NVIDIA Shield, but he knows Rob has repeatedly said to use an Apple 4K TV or TV 4K instead. He's entirely willing to follow that advice, but why again? What is the Apple TV 4K going to do for every streaming service that is better than the NVIDIA Shield? It's not for every, it's just for some. But really, if you're worried about your streaming service, the thing you should be worried about more than anything is your internet connection.
That's true. Yeah,
that's if your
there.
internet connection is bad or not, as high as it needs to be for these 4K, HDR streams, then no matter what box you have, it's going to make no difference. You're still going to get frame rate, changes, and HDR convert, dropping down to SDR occasionally. So number one, more than anything, make sure that you've got that your good high-speed internet.
I can agree with that. Now, in Mitch's case, he's using a projector, so we don't have to worry about Dolby Vision at all. So that was one of the things. Now, the 2019 NVIDIA Shield devices can do Dolby Vision, but he's got a 2017. So if he were using a Dolby Vision TV, that would be one feature to be aware of, but not in his case. So the main thing is, first of all, if you're using Disney Plus, the only device right now that is outputting Atmos audio from Disney Plus is the Apple TV 4K. I am sure that will change in the near future, but for the moment, it's the only one. I'm not sure about other services, if there's any others that are the case, but you can be very certain that if a certain HDR format and Atmos is supported by a streaming service, the Apple TV 4K will do it. So it's like the safe bet as far as that part goes. The main thing, it's like a nitpicky feature that a lot of people aren't even going to care about. But the reason I suggest using the Apple TV 4K for everything is because it automatically changes frame rates, and it does it correctly, and it does it well, and it never screws up. The NVIDIA Shield doesn't automatically change frame rates. The new 2019 versions got a button where if something is already playing, you can try pushing the button and seeing if it matches the frame rate, but it doesn't always work.
It's like a roulette button.
Yeah.
Press a button. Frame rate roulette.
And I mean, it's not automatic. So, I mean, that's about it, honestly. I mean, for the people who are like, I have an NVIDIA Shield, I love it, I don't want to touch an Apple TV 4K, I'm like, other than the frame rate matching, it's great. So that's pretty much it. But I'm like, since the Apple TV 4K exists, and it does it wonderfully, and it does it perfectly, and I'm a stickler for such things, why not? Why not get the auto frame rate matching? Because it does it.
Hold on, I scrolled up because I like that. Anyway. So he knows we continue to say that NVIDIA Shield is the best box for Plex, so he intends to keep his Shield connected for that. With his JVC NX7 as his display, what should the settings be for his Apple TV 4K, and what should the settings be for his NVIDIA Shield that will be used almost exclusively for Plex? And what about YouTube? We said the Shield is better for YouTube, right? Well, it used to be.
Yeah, well, it still
and
is.
Now everything,
it still is better than the Apple TV 4K.
Okay.
For YouTube,
well,
but only in one way. So the Apple TV 4K is a pretty bad YouTube box if you have a lovely 4K display, because it doesn't output 4K resolution at all from YouTube. The Apple TV 4K does not, because they won't support VP9, Google's codec. So at least the NVIDIA Shield will output 4K resolution. The NVIDIA Shield will not output HDR, so neither of them is a perfect YouTube box. And YouTube took away 5.1 audio. I haven't actually checked within the past couple of days to see if they brought it back. But when YouTube did do 5.0 audio, and assuming they will bring it back at some point again in the future, the NVIDIA Shield does 5.1 audio from YouTube. The Apple TV 4K does not. So that's the YouTube side. That one's pretty easy. As far as settings, okay, so the Apple TV 4K, it can be confusing because they ask you right away, as soon as you connect it to an HDR and or Dolby Vision compatible display, a thing pops up that says, you're connected to an HDR display. Do you want to activate HDR? And you would think, well, yeah, I do. That seems like the thing to do. But if you say yes, everything will be in HDR all the time, and it shouldn't be, because most of your content isn't, including your menus and your games. Like, no. So go into the display settings, set it to 4K SDR. That's what you want the default to be. The Apple TV 4K, you can put at 60 hertz because it auto-switches frame rates down properly. You want it in YCBCR color space, not RGB, because all of your videos are in YCBCR. And your choice between 420 or 444 output. If you're going to play games on it, you probably do want to put it at 444, because otherwise some of your colors will be not, the lines won't be quite as sharp. When it's a colored line on top of a colored background, won't be quite as sharp. I leave it at 420. Because that's what all videos are in, and if you're using a long HDMI cable, it saves you some bandwidth, but that's kind of a try both. If your cable handles the bandwidth, go ahead and leave it at 444. There's the match content settings for the Apple TV 4K. Turn them both on. Turn the range on. That's your frame rate matching. Turn the range on is the HDR matching, and the frame rate is the frame rate matching. So turn them both on. It works wonderfully. On the audio side, it's really simple. Set it to Atmos available, and when Atmos is available, it'll play in Atmos. When Atmos isn't available, it'll come out as PCM. So that's all good. What was the other one? Shield. What is it the Shield to? All right. So, yeah, the Shield. All right. Thankfully,
this is for the 2017 model, not the 2019.
This is the 2017 model, although it's going to be the same. All right. So still 4K resolution, except they give you the choice of like every variable of 4K resolution. So you want 3840 by 2160 because that's Ultra HD, and that's what all your videos are dealing with. So 3840 by 2160. I'm going to suggest now. Okay. I know I talked about putting the shield into 23.976 hertz all the time so that that's its default. And then if you're watching something that's 60 hertz, you can try using the match frame rate and going up. But multiple people have now said to me, it looks too choppy. I can't even use the thing. And I'm like, yeah, it does. It's a horrible experience moving around the menus when everything is at 24 frames a second. So put it to 59.94 because they give you the option between actual 60 and 59.94. And 59.94 is correct. So 59.94. Always leave the NVIDIA Shield when you're using a display that is capable of HDR in Rec 2020 color mode. Always leave it there. It has a thingy that says, do you want to match the content color space? Don't turn that on. It doesn't work. NVIDIA Shield. So yeah, leave it at Rec 2020 all the time. Put it in YUV format. That's their name for YCBCR. Don't put it in RGB. Put it in 10-bit. You're using a display that can do HDR10. Put it in 10-bit. Don't put it in 12-bit. Don't put it in 8-bit. Put it in 10-bit. Yeah, okay. Audio side, is there anything? Audio, put it to auto. It does a great job on the audio side, but turn off the option that says, do you want Dolby audio processing? And nowhere does it explain what that is. You know what Dolby audio processing does? It takes everything that was Dolby Digital Plus and tries to turn it into Dolby Digital. But you know what? It doesn't work properly. NVIDIA Shield. So leave that off. And by default, that one's on. So turn off the Dolby audio processing. Plex. He's using Plex. Plex has its own settings. You go up to your username. You click on that. You can choose settings now. Go to settings. You guys have to scroll way down, and at nearly the bottom, it says advanced settings. There, you can turn on match frame rate, which only in Plex works. So that's why Plex is awesome. And then you need the audio in the advanced settings set to HDMI pass-through so that you get actual lossless audio. It isn't trying to decode anything. You just get the bit stream, which is what you want. It's a lot of settings. It's a settings show, Tom.
Yes, it's such a compelling content, too. I'm so glad that we're doing this. And so any reason at all for him to upgrade this 2017 NVIDIA Shield? He runs his own Plex server on a powerful rack-mounted PC, so no need for his Shield to act as a Plex server. His projector doesn't do Dolby Vision, and we've said the match frame rate beta isn't great, so just AI upscaling, right? I mean, if you're just doing streaming movies from your Plex server, then I don't see any reason why you need to upgrade, since it's basically just putting through the frame rate, putting through the audio. I don't see any reason for you to upgrade.
Absolutely. No, the reason would be if you have a Dolby Vision TV and you really, really wanted it, but you don't. You have a projector, so stick with your 2017.
So NVIDIA Shield has that automatic color space switching option that Rob said not to use, but does Plex need to have that turned on? Is it a software thing where the Shield doesn't auto-switch color spaces on the hardware level, but if the apps are properly written for it, it will work properly?
Don't turn it on. That's the easy answer. Don't turn on automatic color space or match color content, whatever it is. Don't turn it on. It will always come out as Rec 2020. Your projector will always say it's receiving Rec 2020. But what the NVIDIA Shield does do is takes Rec 709 colors, puts them into a Rec 2020 container, and they all come out correct. So just leave it. It'll always say 2020. That's okay.
Is the match frame rate beta on the new 2019 NVIDIA Shield model supposed to replace the frame rate switching built into Plex? Is it just there to add frame rate switching to apps that don't do frame rate switching themselves? How does it work if you're using Plex?
Yeah, so if you're using Plex, Plex has its own frame rate switching built in. That's under the advanced settings. I guess they are trying to give you some option to match frame rates in apps that don't support it. Apps could be written to support it. Obviously, Plex did it. But I guess that's what it is there for. It doesn't replace what Plex does. It is unnecessary within Plex. There's nothing to toggle on and off. It is the thing where the content has to be playing already, and then you press the button, and inside Plex, it does nothing. So, that's the frame rate thing.
All right, finally, done with that. Let's do something that doesn't involve settings.
Except I think this one does.
Oh, my God. Patricio went Black Friday shopping for a TV. He had considered a 65-inch OLED, but the Vizio P Quantum X was over $700 less, so he couldn't pass it up. And the savings left him enough money for the acoustic treatments he so badly needs in his master bedroom. He got his Vizio connected to the Denon X1600H receiver. He tried using the Plex app that's built into his Vizio. 4K and HDR worked, but his audio was down mixed to 2-channel stereo. His Blu-ray backups in Plex have lossless Dolby True HD or DTS HD Master Audio, and some have Atmos or DTS X. So how can you get those bit streams using Plex on his Vizio P Quantum X app? Atmos comes out of his Vizio if he uses Netflix or Amazon Prime Video, so it should be able to work for Plex, right?
Nope. Unfortunately, no. There is no way to get Dolby True HD, DTS HD Master Audio, or the Blu-ray / Ultra HD versions of Atmos and DTS X to come out of the app that's built into your Vizio TV. It just doesn't have the ability to do it. So unfortunately, you can't do what you want to do with the equipment you have right now. Atmos is one of those things where Atmos is not its own like inherent format, right? Atmos from Netflix is not the same thing as Atmos from a Blu-ray disc. Atmos is an extension to some other audio codec. So it could be Dolby Digital Plus with an Atmos extension, which is what you're getting from Netflix or Amazon Prime Video. It could also be an extension to lossless True HD, which is what you're getting off of a physical Blu-ray disc. So it isn't the same thing. You can get Atmos from Netflix or Amazon Prime from the built-in app, but that is not what is on a Blu-ray disc or an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc. So it doesn't work coming out of Plex. So the solution is to get an NVIDIA Shield. Now, in your case, he already has a Plex server, so you could get the cheaper one, which is the cylinder-shaped one, the new 2019. It's all they're selling these days. Your Vizio supports Dolby Vision. So, hey, that's a good choice because the Tube NVIDIA Shield from 2019 now supports Dolby Vision. That's great. You might have just heard me go through a bunch of NVIDIA Shield settings, but if you want Dolby Vision, they're ever so slightly different. Now, it's not that tough because if you turn Dolby Vision on in the NVIDIA Shield, you are greatly limited in the number of available choices for output because only some of them work with Dolby Vision. Yours will be the same thing that I said in the last one, 3840 by 2160, 59.94 hertz, Rec 2020 all the time. But yours will say YUV422 instead of YUV420, and yours will have to be 12-bit instead of 10-bit. You have no choice to do Dolby Vision. It has to be 12-bit. The rest is going to be the same. We talked about the advanced settings in Plex, but that is the only way other than like a PC to get lossless audio coming out of Plex. There are no other boxes, no other smart TVs that'll put lossless audio out of Plex. The NVIDIA Shield is the only game in town. All
right. How much does that thing cost?
I think that one's $150 now. The Tube.
Ryan has big ideas in mind for his 11 by 26 foot basement room. He has envisioned a false wall with a 125-inch acoustically transparent screen, Epson 5050 UB, and a Denon X8500H with a 9.2.4 Atmos configuration. But life and finances has sobered that plan, and the price and size need to come way down. He will only be able to use half of the 11 by 26 foot space, so 5.5 by 13.
No, half. So 11 by 13. Not a quarter, Tom.
It's funnier if it's a quarter. 5.5 by 13. So he'll be sitting in the closet. So 11 by 13. So he's thinking there'll now be 11 from front to back, and the theater area will be 13 feet wide, with the right side being completely open, being only 11. So he's going to be kind of on one side.
He'll be shifted to one side, yeah.
Being only 11 feet from front to back, now he figures a 92-inch silver ticket screen hung directly on the wall makes sense, as does getting rid of surround back speakers and going with 5.1.4 setup instead, although he's still considering front wides. Do these sound like reasonable adjustments? That's exactly what I would say to do.
I mean, the only question I have is, could you have the theater being 11 feet wide, the theater area is still 13 feet now front to back, but you just have the back open instead of the side?
I would still, even in that case, though, go with a 5.2.
Oh, yes, absolutely, because you're going to have so much space behind you now that your surround back speakers are an entire room away. That doesn't make sense. No, all of it makes... I'm just wondering if the whole thing could be basically rotated 90 degrees so that you're facing what would be his left wall in the way he's described.
Right.
Now the theater's only 11 feet wide, but maybe he needs it to be 13 feet wide. I don't know if that's the case or something.
Either way, I don't think it's 6 of one, half dozen of
It
another.
is.
Really, it's not that big, and the size of the screen really is going to depend on how far away you want to, what's your field of view and how far away you want to sit. But yes, 5.2.4. In your case, if you leave it so that you have a wall on your left and it's open on your right, you're going to put both your subwoofers on the right side of your so that they're basically at the midpoint of those sides
of the actual space.
The actual space, not just the area that you're in. So you can't put it in your next to your front right speaker and then the back left corner. That doesn't work because sound doesn't stay within just where your theater area is. It's going to go everywhere. So you would put both of your subwoofers on the right side in the midpoints of the walls as best as you can,
front and back.
So for receiver options, he's looking at the Denon X2600H or 3600H. Will he be able to expand either of those with an external 2-channel amp? Would the 3600H let him add front wides? No. Is the upgrade to Odyssey XT32 worth it all on its own?
All of this is kind of moot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the 2600 is 7 speakers and that's it.
Right.
You
I
can't.
thought 3600 does 9 though, doesn't it?
The 3600 now does 9 out of the box and can be expanded to 11, although he's not going to be expanding to 11, except I think he had it in mind 5.1.4 and then add front wides, but the 3600 cannot add front wides.
Right.
So, I mean, I think the 3600 is absolutely the right choice for you. Because you want
between those two, it is the only one that does the number of speakers you want.
It's the only one that does 4 overhead speakers. That's
yeah.
So you're going to end up with XT32 as a byproduct, not because it's a particular thing you're going for in this case. But yet to add front wide, the only model in Denon's lineup that does front wides is the X8500H flagship, which I know you wanted, but it's really expensive. It's $4,000.
It's really expensive, and I don't know that front wides are really worth it. I mean, I think that that's something that you would like to try and maybe use and maybe really love.
But the price is way up there.
The price is ridiculous, yes. And, so let's pretend that you really wanted 7.2.4. So either one of these receivers would have been an option.
Well, the 3600 would be an option. That can do 7.
Sorry, not 7. A 5.2.
Oh, 5. Okay, 5.2.2. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Then either one of these receivers would have been an option. All that being equal, would I have said that XT32 would have been worth it? That would have been hard for me to say. I would have had a hard time saying that XT32 would be 100% worth it. I would say that in my case, it would be important enough to me to get it.
Okay.
That I would get the 3600 because I think having the best Odyssey, the best room correction can make enough of a difference that I would have that, just like we were talking about before. Right. I would be thinking to myself, I really wish I had gotten the better Odyssey. I wonder what this would have sounded like with the better Odyssey.
Well, I mean, really the comparison there would be like a 2600 versus a 3500, because the 3500, just like the 2600, was limited to 7 speakers max. And the big difference there was the 3500 gives you pre-outs and the 2600 doesn't have pre-outs, and XT32 and Odyssey. Those were kind of the big differences. And that's where you're like, just for XT32. But for him, it's all moot because you want 4 overhead speakers and the 2600 won't do it.
So for the time being, he needs a projector for under $700.
Yes.
How do you feel about a big TV? He came across the new 650 Optima HD 27 DHR.
So that should be HDR. I transposed. It is HDR because it indicates it does HDR.
The HD 27 HDR, which is an interesting model. It's native 1080p, but it can accept 4K HDR 10 signals. Should he get it, or is there a different model worth considering? So
this is really tough for me to say because it does accept HDR, which almost no other $700 projector will do. It actually does have an HDR mode, so it's not like it's completely useless in just accepting the signal. I mean, it actually does kick into a different picture mode that does get brighter. But it doesn't have accurate color for anything. Like SDR doesn't have accurate color, HDR doesn't have accurate color. Its lens, okay, so technically it has a tiny bit of zoom, and it's a 1.1 times zoom lens. It essentially has a fixed lens. It has no lens shift whatsoever. So here's the, does having an HDR mode mean so much to you versus what I would recommend in this price class would be BenQ's HT 2050A. Now, the 2050A is a 1080p projector that does standard dynamic range. It doesn't take a 4K signal. It doesn't take HDR of any type. But for standard dynamic range, it has really accurate color, and it has an actual zoom lens with some vertical lens shift, which is really nice to have when you're setting up your projector. So I'm going to put it to you this way. Color and lens versus I kick into an HDR mode when I get an HDR signal, but my colors are never accurate for anything.
It's very hard for me to get behind that Optima, to be honest with you. That's like we were talking about cable manufacturers earlier, where they fix a problem, but then in doing so, they ignore a bunch of other stuff. That's what's happened here. Like, we can put HDR into this. What about the rest of it? Nope.
Well, because I mean, it's still using it's using the lesser color wheel that just it doesn't reach 709, let alone P3, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I'd still go for the BenQ myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he won't be upgrading his speakers from the sub for a while. He'd like to start planning ahead. He was originally going to get the Ascend CMT 340 SCs when he was planning a false wall with acoustically transparent screen. But now that the speakers will be visible and closer, his wife doesn't like their plain looks and large size. A large size, in particular, can be an issue. So what are some new options? His wife saw some white speakers and she thought they looked nice, but would white speakers make sense with a projection setup? Ryan is thinking maybe Kef or Aperion, but both of those offer white finishes. But what would we suggest as front LCR speakers for under $1,000 for all three? So yeah, you're gonna have to really involve your wife in this process, and I would take her shopping with you, and I would search for things online with her. Well,
I mean, we should adjust the white speakers just right away because. I mean, projection, it's not what I would go for with a projection setup. I wouldn't have white speakers.
I wouldn't either, but I think that who cares?
Yes.
I mean, if the option is not having speakers or not having, having to deal with, trying to buy cubes or something because they're small, so that whatever. If you can go with a bigger, better sounding speaker because it's white versus a smaller, lesser speaker because it's not white, I mean, I go with white.
Right. And I mean, the options that he's mentioned, both the Kef Q series or the Aperion Intimus series, or you might even be able to afford, what is the one step up from Intimus that Aperion has now? The Novus series, which are also available in white. I mean, those are great options. So sound quality wise, I mean, obviously output wise, when what is he going to be 8 feet away?
You don't really have to worry about any speaker will do it. So your receiver will have no problem powering almost any speaker. I would definitely, either let your wife listen to this podcast or talk to her about the fact that when you project onto a screen, light reflects off the screen, which means it's going to reflect off those white speakers as well. The whole point of having black plain speakers is that in a dark room they disappear and that they don't reflect light. Right. If she really wants white, and that's fine. I mean, honestly, you can go with almost any speaker in this room. So it is, there are so many options out there in this price point which are good enough sounding that we're okay with, that it is an aesthetic choice for you.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, let's say he really loved the Ascend's sound or something, right? Now, you don't need the CMT 340s anymore. They are much bigger than you need for this setup. You could go with the HTM 200s, which are way smaller. Now, they're still plain black boxes, but that also now means they're wall mountable. So you could be considering that. Like, are small plain black boxes mounted to the wall something you could consider? There's Klipsch's on-wall reference Premier speakers too, which are really nice looking, but they're black, but they would go on the wall, right? Is that something that would be slick enough? But
are those $1,000 for three?
Yeah, well, because he doesn't need the big ones. So he can get the ones that are $300 each. 3 of those are $900. You're fine. But you know what? I kind of bet he's going to end up with Kef.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, they're available in multiple finishes, black, white, or a nice wood finish as well. And he asked in his email a little bit about the center. And I'm like, you know what you can do? Take a look at the Q150 bookshelf speaker, because that's all you need. For output-wise, that'll be fine. Right. It is one woofer with a tweeter embedded right in the middle of it. there's no reason you can't use that as a center. You do not need something that is called a dedicated center speaker. You can turn the Q150 on its side, and its dispersion is exactly the same in every orientation because it doesn't even have a tweeter above a woofer or anything like that. So I bet that ticks all the boxes. Like, it's small, it's in the price range, sounds really good, the dispersion's really easy, and you can get it in white.
Yeah, I would definitely go with something that you mounted on the wall if at all possible. Not necessarily mounted, but even if you just put a shelf.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I mean, we're not even running a speaker cable all the way up the wall. You know what I mean? You're just punching a hole and then punching a hole, cutting a hole at the bottom, and you don't have to even put a box down there. You just take a cover for a cable box, a coax thing. Don't put the coax thing in there. Just have a wire coming out, and it's at the bottom, and then you just screw the plate directly into the wall. People who install telephones used to do that all the time. Joe works for a company that is building where did I get that word from? That is building an assisted living facility. Word got around that Joe is into home theater, so they asked him to put together a plan for a theater room for the residents. The clients seemed a bit overwhelmed by his suggestions since their last theater was a business class projector shining on the wall with 2 speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. He got them to increase their budget, but there is definitely an eye towards keeping the prices down. For this new project, the room is 26 by 30 by 9, so quite a large space. Around 7,000 cubic feet. Seating is 18 people, and it's for seniors. They don't necessarily want extremely loud sound pressure levels. Yeah, they say that, and then they all complain they can't hear anything. But the sound needs to be as clear as possible. Joe came up with a plan for 3 rows of 6 seats each. He's suggesting the Epson 5040 UV projector with a 125-inch acoustically transparent screen. Stewart film screen.
Yeah, we're going to be addressing that. Yep.
Yeah, let's not go there. And an interior designer will be involved, and they will select the seating and finishing of the room. He encouraged going with dark gray and blackout coverings for the windows. He also forwarded them GIC and Acoustimac to see their selection of acoustic panels. His company will install appropriate HVAC for the space and the number of people. He figured 3 rows of seating would be approximately 10, 15, and 20 feet. For the 125 inches is not nearly big enough for this, but go on. For the visual and room side of things, what do we think of his ideas so far? Yeah, so as much acoustic treatments as you can possibly get. I don't know that you necessarily need. I mean, if you're constructing this, I would just do what movie theaters do and just fabric cover the walls and insulation behind everything.
No, I mean,
everything should be.
Fortunately, a lot of that is going to be what the interior designer is willing to do. But if you can discuss it with them,
that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, if you can discuss it with them and say, look, we're building all this anyway. What we can do is put in some simple frames, put in some insulation in those frames, and then you cover it in whatever fabric you want, whatever the look is. Then that might be an easy solution and very cost-effective solution too, because that's something your company can help on the construction part of it.
I don't know why he's going acoustically transparent either at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only thing would be if the screen is so large that the center speaker is going to be way down low. But you know what? This is so he did mention, because it was a long back and forth email that he just forwarded the whole thing. They're not planning to have seating risers. So I'm like, well, that means you're going to want to mount the screen pretty high.
And
so that the people in the back row can at least still, that maybe the very bottom of the screen is obstructed, but you're probably going to have it a little bit higher than normal, which means you almost certainly have room for a center speaker below the screen at a reasonable height.
Even if you don't, I mean, you could put the center channel above the screen.
You could,
depending on
or
where
you could
it
do
is.
that.
I think
kind of a thing I don't really agree with because our ears don't stereo image up down that well, but you could do one above and one below. People have done it.
I would do one above and one below, but not think about stereo imaging. Just think about output and
sheer
directionality.
Output. Yeah.
But
you could put a center speaker above and below the screen.
This is definitely like a horn loaded room.
Oh yeah. We're gonna get to the sound in a bit, but as far as the so we've adjusted the room because we think your company should help on the building of some simple frame to hold insulation. The interior designer covers it in whatever fabric they want. The visual side of things. Now, I'm almost thinking this might be a good setup for an ultra short throw, because I do you want this room truly blacked out for 18 seniors?
Yeah.
Right? I'm thinking some ambient light, even just from the perspective of safety.
Yeah.
is not a bad idea, which means I'm considering ultra short throw here. I mean, we've got some really lovely options now, like that Optima Cinema XP1, which is, it's about $3,000. It's ever so slightly more expensive than the 5040 UB you were considering, but it's something I would consider. Because ultra short throw means that you can have a little bit of ambient light. You do have to get the correct screen to go with it, though. I would probably point you to Elite screens when price is a consideration. I like Illume Visions better, like from a pure performance perspective for someone like me. But for reasonability, Elite screens, they call it their ceiling light rejection screens. They're appropriate for ultra short throw. You can get a nice large size for about $1,300, but you were considering a Stewart film screen. This is less expensive than a Stewart film screen.
Yeah.
Now, if you're like, nope, not going to do ultra short throw, okay, I would maybe consider an ambient light rejecting screen. Again, Illume Vision is the performance one that I like best, but the cost is higher. So again, Elite Screens has ambient light rejecting options. I would go for like their Cinema 3D, which is not overly done. It won't hotspot too crazily, but it does reject some ambient light. I would maybe consider that. If you're like, nope, we're just going to go with a plain white screen, don't go Stewart film screen, go Silver Ticket. Even if you want acoustically transparent, if you're like, that's the only way we're going to do this, Silver Ticket has woven acoustic screens that are like super inexpensive.
Right.
So multiple things there to consider about the screen.
There may be a reason why he's going with Stewart that we don't
like they just
recognize.
Already work with them and get a deal from them. Could be.
And if that's the case, that's fine. But if
I don't think it needs to be acoustically transparent.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be acoustically transparent. And if you can't get a deal with Stewart, then you need to be looking at these other options, which are all much cheaper.
I would consider ambient light rejecting in here. I think you want to have some ambient light at all times, just for safety.
Yeah. So on the audio side, he's proposed a 7.2.4 configuration using a Denon X4500H dual PC 2000 Pro subs, since they're out now, in diagonally opposite corners, and in-wall HSU speakers. His company will construct decoupled party walls for sound isolation, and all the speakers would have backup boxes. Do we have any thoughts on the plan for that audio? Yeah, I think you need 3 speakers on each side wall. If you have 3 rows of seats, I would put 3 speakers on that side walls, and when you wire them, you're going to wire some in series and some in parallel so that you keep the impedance around 8 ohms. So you'll have to take a look at how, because basically one halves it, one doubles it, so you kind of go back.
Or you could even do 4 on each side and then just do series parallel wiring. But you know what? Don't do Atmos in here. Don't do it. I know you got the space. I know this is what you would do for your own theater, and it's what I would do for my own theater, but don't do it. Your senior residents don't need more sound coming at them from more directions, muddying up the dialogue.
Right. I might even just go 5.2.
I would go 5.2. Now, the surround channels will have multiple speakers playing each channel because you got the 3 rows of seats, and like I say, do 3 or 4 side speakers, but I would limit the channel count to 5.2, which means you can save money on the receiver because now you need a get an X3500H from Accessories for Less for $450. All right, that's the splurge one. But honestly, that's what I would go with this. Now, if you are driving 3 or 4 speakers on each side, 1 channel, but 3 or 4 speakers on each side, you might want to use an external amplifier for that rather than just the built-in amplifier in the receiver. But the X3500H has a full set of pre-outs, so that's easy to do. I like your choice of speakers. I think the horn-loaded HSU speakers are a great choice.
Those are fine.
The choice of cylinder subs, I mean, yeah, I like those. Is it for 7,000 cubic feet? Is it going to hit 115 decibels at 20 hertz? No.
Nope.
I also don't think you need or want to. So I think all of that is good, but don't do Atmos. Do 5.2 multiple side surround speakers.
So he's planning on setting them up with a Harmony Elite for remote control, a Panasonic UB420 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, at Apple TV 4K, and APC J25 backup battery backup power protection. Any thoughts there? That's fine.
All of those look good. I might question the Harmony Elite because it's a little bit complicated. Everything's on that touch screen. I'm like,
Yeah.
how many sources are you actually going to have? It sounds like 3, because I think they're going to have cable service as well.
Right, sure.
Could you maybe just go with a Harmony Companion? It's all just hard buttons. It has 3 activities. So if you got 3 sources, it's perfect for your 3 activities.
My guess is that the people who are going to be controlling this are the staff.
That could be.
So in which case, it's going to be 6 of one, half dozen on the other.
Although the companion costs less, so you could save $200 there.
Yeah, you can save some money there. Yeah, I had something else to add to this, and I don't remember.
I mean, I like the rest of it. I think the choice of everything else makes perfect sense. I don't know if they're going to be watching Ultra HD Blu-rays, but you know what? It's a $250 player at this point that plays everything, so why not? And it'll look excellent with that projector that you chose, or an ultra short throw if you change your mind. Yeah.
If I remember, I'll come back to it, but I don't remember what it is. Ashley on Facebook. Ashley just bought an Xbox One S. He's still using a 1080p display for the time being. So what are the optimal outputs? Oh my God.
Settings. Okay, so anything that might be confusing. Okay, so you're going to set yours to 1080p resolution. I would hope that's pretty obvious. There is the setting right next to it that says video fidelity, which is confusing. Always leave it at 24-bit. There's no reason to ever up it to 30 or 36. I don't even really know why those are there, because any content that actually uses 10 or 12-bit automatically changes to it anyway. So leave it at 24. Under the the color space, leave it standard. Don't change it to RGB. You're still connected to a TV. So your advanced settings under video, it has a bunch of checkboxes for things you can allow. They'll probably all be grayed out except for 2 of them in your case, because if it's not a 3D display, that'll be grayed out. Yours isn't a 4K display, that'll be grayed out. Yours isn't an HDR display, that'll be grayed out. So you can choose, is it compatible with 50 hertz? I don't know. Is yours? Is it compatible with 24 hertz? Yeah, probably. So put a check mark there. And then the YCC422. Do you allow YCC422? Yes, do so. Otherwise, none of your discs will look correct. So put a check mark there. Sound, I don't know what he's using for sound, but if you're using an AV receiver, set it to bitstream, turn optical off if you're connected with an HDMI, and set it to Atmos for home theater, because that's actually working pretty much correctly now. Finally. Took until the very end of the console's life.
Right. Yes, they finally seem to have gotten all the audio to work correctly. So you can basically put everything to bitstream these days.
Atmos for home theater, if you have an Atmos compatible receiver. And then under the disc and Blu-ray section, which is separate from the display and sound section, you want to check the box that says let my receiver decode audio. But that's about all there is to do there.
So what about when he gets a 4K TV in the future, or for his brother who already has one?
So set the resolution to 4K. I would hope that one's obvious. And under the advanced section, turn on HDR, turn on 4K, and the rest is the same.
All right.
Yeah.
Eddie on Twitter, he asks, what's our take on the NAD T777 V3 receiver? I don't know. I didn't know NAD still made new things.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they just kept putting out the old things over and over again.
You know what? I really don't mind this receiver. It does 7.2.4. It has DRAC built in, and I'm betting that's what drew him to it, is that it has DRAC. It is the LE version of DRAC, which means that it only goes up to 500 hertz, and it only does 1 subwoofer channel. You can pay $99 to upgrade it to DRAC Live Full, which gives you the entire frequency range and more. I think it gives you more memory slots. Doesn't do anything on the subwoofer side of things, but it gives you the full frequency range. You don't really need that. You could probably stick with the LE version. But I see almost no reason to ever get the 777 because they have the 758, which does everything the 777 does, except that it doesn't have as many HDMI inputs. And what was the other one? Oh, it has a little bit less power on its built-in amplifiers. But it's like $1,500 less, the 758. So I'm like, well, with that
I'm
price,
waiting for them to come to accessories for less. When they come to accessories for less, I'll start recommending NAD again.
but with that price difference, I'm like,
I'll
well,
start recommending NAD.
I can add an HDMI switch if I need more HDMI inputs. I can afford one of those with my $1,500 that I saved. And both of these have 7 amplifiers built in, even though they can do 7.1.4. And both of them are the case where you can't choose how to assign those amplifiers other than turning the surround backs into a zone 2 if you want to. So to power your 4 overhead speakers, you have to have 4 external amplifiers for your overhead speakers. So I'm like, well, with the $1,500 you saved, why don't you head on over to Outlaw Audio, get one of their lovely 7-channel amplifiers. You power your front 3 and you power your 4 overheads with your Outlaw. You power your surrounds and surround backs with the T758. It can handle those. And you buy yourself an HDMI switch if you need more inputs, and you're still several $100s ahead. But honestly, it's a pretty darn good receiver. And the 758 is not unreasonably priced. It's like $1,500, which is, expensive, but not outlandish, not what we might think a NAD would cost.
Right. $1,500 is not bad.
Yeah.
For a brand new NAD receiver.
Yeah. And with the rack LE built in. So yeah, I'm very okay with the 758. I don't think the 777 makes a whole lot of sense.
They've got the modular design, so once you buy it, you never have to buy another receiver again because they'll put out modules. That's why they never ever put out new receivers, because they've been doing this modular design for such a long time.
That's why it's V3.
That's right. That's right. Infinite Gary. Gary watches a lot of live sports. Sometimes the crowd noise makes it difficult to understand the announcer, so he'll resort to setting his pre-pro into mono output. Other times he dislikes the announcers, so he'll disconnect the center speaker so that he doesn't hear them at all.
Yep.
Man's got some time on his hands. So first, on the technical front, is there a reason the balance of announcers versus crowd noise is so inconsistent, or is it just down to sloppy mixing by the broadcast trucks? I mean, yes, it's down to how it's being done by the TV station.
I mean, most of the live sports that I watch is hockey, mostly Vancouver Canucks games, because I live in Vancouver. That's my team. And even on the home games, which are all broadcast from the same place, it's sometimes inconsistent how loud the announcers are versus the crowd noise. So that's just the mixing that not much you can do about that.
Yeah. Since Next Gen TV is touting new object-based audio formats, one of the features they've been highlighting is the ability to adjust the announcers independent of all of the sounds. You could even switch between various languages, including, supposedly, being able to stream alternate dialogue from an internet source that isn't even part of the original broadcast options. Do we really think all of that will come to pass? Will this be an ideal solution for him? The second part to your question is yes, it would be an ideal solution for you because you care enough about this to unplug your center channel speaker. Mm-hmm. Do I think it'll come to pass? Maybe. I
actually believe that the turning up the center speaker independent of everything else, I actually believe they will do that because it's been so requested. I don't know that they'll let you
replace the announcers though, because
I'm sure it'll be possible on a technical level. I bet it'll happen at the beginning, like people will be excited about it and some people will be out there. I mean, there'll be people doing it for free and just saying, install it, because it does have both broadcast and internet are combined in Next Gen TV. But I bet as time goes on, the number of things that actually do it will be very few.
Yeah. I could see it maybe done for languages. Mm-hmm. But that's about it. I have a very, they're going to want to have more control over, their broadcast. They're not going to want you to have their video with somebody else's audio, because you record that and then, upload to YouTube, and suddenly they've got what looks to be their broadcast with somebody saying, reading Mein Kampf or something like that over the top of it. They're not going to want that. So I have very little faith that they'll let you choose which audio, but they will probably have the ability to switch to different languages. Mm-hmm. So just for kicks, Gary was doing some direct AV speaker comparisons in his 2-channel setup. So he had a pair of speakers side by side. At one point, he ended up playing some music with all 4 speakers active at the same time. It was actually very pleasing, with the soundstage sounding bigger and full. Is this something worth considering and trying? Literally using multiple speakers to play a single channel. You can do whatever you want, Gary. The reason why we don't suggest this is because of all the things that we talk about when we talk about how center channels with
MTM design.
MTM designs, how the comb filtering can mess things up and
Yeah, now you
everything
got
else.
two tweeters that are beside each other, two different speakers, so two different tweeters that are side by side and definitely far enough apart that at those frequencies you're getting weird sound wave interactions. So if you move your head, you might hear a weird warble or comb filtering type of sounds and that. Right. What? If you were like, oh, this sounds bigger and fuller, I'm like, what also makes it sound bigger and fuller? Turning up the volume, which is probably what happened just by having two speakers playing at the same time.
Speakers play the same thing, yeah. Even if you level matched them, which I don't know how you would have level matched two different speakers on the same receiver. So it's interesting. So one of them was probably playing louder than the other, anyways, and all of that. But I mean, the reason why we don't do this is because in order to get very consistent and good results, you would need to do a lot of measuring and a lot of math and a lot of trial and error, and it's just not worth it when you could just turn it up and use your single set of speakers.
A lot of things get solved.
There is a very, at least famous in my mind, thread on Audioholics very, very, very long time ago, before I ever started working for them, with a dude who came on and said, I've got all these speakers and I want to play them all together. I want to put them all together at the front of my room so that they'll be louder. Can I do that? And everybody basically said, no, you can't. And then he got super angry. And then started posting pictures of movie theaters with multiple speakers up front and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, yeah, but you're not in the movie theater and you're not doing this up. And then it really devolved into something epic and how angry this dude got. So the answer to your question, Gary, is this something worth considering and trying? You could try it all you want. No one's going to stop you. Is it worth us recommending that people do it? Answer is unequivocally no.
Not something I'm going to be telling people to do. If they want to do it and they like it, more power to them.
They want to stack subwoofers? Fine. They want to stack anything else? No. Josh asks, oh my God, what time is it?
Well, we're almost on to 2 hours because we started late. This will probably be the last one.
All right. Josh says, what's the deal with OLED black crush? Is it a fact? Is it a myth? Josh has been seeing a lot of hubbub about OLED black crush on forums lately, seemingly spurred on by several YouTube videos that have been posting about it. So what's the real deal?
I was so funny. He sent me a link, and I'm like, I know who this is. Before I opened the link, before I saw anything, didn't see a preview or anything, I'm like, I know who this is going to be. And I don't even want to say his name, because if you don't know about him, don't watch him. And if you do know about him, I'm sorry. I find it very difficult to even listen to anything. I tried to, because I wanted to see, well, what is he actually saying about OLED black? This video was ridiculous. I'm like, if this is what you've been listening to, like, just put that completely out of your mind. He was going on and about he would just flick between the different preset picture modes, like, vivid and standard and home and cinema and everything. And he's like, oh, look how when I go from cinema to game, it like crashes the blacks. I'm like, well, yeah, because one of them is accurate and one of them isn't. That's your complaint?
I can crush blacks on any display.
Oh, you sure can.
Just give me that remote and I'll show you how I can crush the blacks, and I can crush the whites, and I can create all sorts of artifacts in there too.
I can make the colors look real weird too. I can make it look black and white. Did you know any TV can be a black and white TV? Amazing.
Just try hard enough.
But no, okay, so the actual, because there are people going around saying, okay, OLEDs inherently crush some black detail, and this is a reason you shouldn't get OLEDs. And there's still a weird contingent of people who are like against OLED. It's like the hill they want to die on. But objectively, every single OLED TV, because every single OLED TV uses an LG display manufactured panel. Still at this time, nobody else is actually manufacturing OLED panels besides LG display. And they do all inherently have a little bit of black crush. I think the first 2 steps out of the 1,024 steps, or actually it's fewer than that because we've got the video below black and the video above white, but the first 2 steps above video black are crushed. There's nothing you can do about it. They're gone, man. That detail lost. Now,
it's a travesty. I'll have to switch to LEDs that don't do it, right?
Well,
oh wait,
yeah. Well, I'll get to.
They don't have true blacks.
I'll get to that in a second. So there's that. Now, Panasonic over in Europe. All right, they released a GZ2000. They tuned that thing like crazy. They put in crazy high-end processing and all this stuff. They did everything they could to avoid as much black crush as humanly possible. And you know what? They did it. They did it. It costs like $2,000 or 2,000 pounds more than every other OLED, but they did it. Good on them. You can't get it here. I think he actually wants to ask about that. But yeah, okay. But then there's the LG C9, which is very affordable. You can get it everywhere. And they put in a feature where you can manually change the electro-optical transfer function of the TV. You pretty much want to measure it to do this. You want a professional calibrator to do this, but you can manually do almost every step along the entire curve. And if you do that, you can get back ever so slightly, not quite as much as the Panasonic, but man, is it close. In fact, it was close enough that it won Vincent T.O.'s HDTV test shootout. He didn't think the LG would, but it did because he could calibrate the thing to be like perfect. Now, if all you're judging it on is the preset picture modes and you opt not to use the most accurate picture mode, yeah, it's all weird and contrasty and the edge enhancement is turned on. The dynamic contrast setting is like, yeah, weird things. Okay, if that's what you're judging it on. But no, the LG C9 is remarkably accurate and can be crazy accurate if a professional calibrator gets their hands on it. And then you go, okay, well, what's the alternative then, right? Like a flagship LCD. Okay, all the Samsungs, they crush blacks way more than any OLED does because the way they've tuned their local dimming algorithm, they're trying to not have any blooming. And to do that, you either have to, so not only do the Samsung QLEDs tend to crush blacks, they tend to lose stars in a star field. Like the stars just go away because they didn't want to turn the backlight on bright enough that it would create haloing around the stars. So like the stars are gone. Okay. So Sony probably has the most accurate just above black levels in their LCD, right? Like one step above video black. It's still there. Great. You know, okay. That's the most important thing to you out of everything. Good. Go get a Sony flagship. That's the deal.
Lastly, he asked, will we ever see Panasonic TVs in the U.S. again? Is it true that Panasonic is making the very best OLED TVs at the moment? If so, why is the U.S. stuck with lesser quality panels? Again, it's the same panels.
It's the same panels. They
the different processing.
In that one aspect, yes, but you know what the Panasonic doesn't have? It doesn't have frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping for HDR, which is one of the other reasons the LG One is the overall best TV. And you can get the LG here in the United States. Will Panasonic ever come back to USA? I don't think so. I think they're done. You know, the TV market it's not conducive to them coming back. I don't really see it happening.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But
I don't think so.
We don't know.
I wouldn't predict that they would. Yeah.
All right, who we got left?
We have Carl R. We have Chris T. We have, I'm not sure if it's Dennis or Denis because the way it's spelled, Denis. Might be Denis. Dennis, Denis, one of the two. Carl L. and Michael I.
We have that many left? I mean,
we had 18 on the list, dude. We got to 13. We had 18 on the list. That's how it goes.
May have There must be short questions. All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Ryan for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and giving us a PayPal donation, as well as our 92 patrons over at patreon.com, including James House of Cards. We need 8 more donors.
I know.
Over at Patreon.
It hasn't been going up.
One of you as a winner.
It went down as one. But yes, Ryan, thank you for the donation. Our 92 patrons at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, thank you so much. Thank you, James House of Cards, for being one of our ongoing patrons.
I want to thank James for talking us up to SVS, Andrew for talking us up to Gibbies, and Damien for talking us up to Ascent.
Yeah, thank you, James, Andrew, and Damien. We appreciate that support.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.